All right, hi everyone. Okay. All right. So, any questions before we start? Do you guys have anything to discuss? Any point to ask? Anything, guys? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. All right. Okay. So, is there anything that you wanted to ask regarding the CDTs that we talk about the CDTs? We created some CDTs, data store, how to create a table, how to insert some data. Anything around there? No? Okay. Let me share my screen. Today we are going to talk about the query entities, like how do we pull the data from the database. The data is available into the table. We need to bring it to the Appian design label so that we can work it out. Let's say, for example, if someone wants to query the data or search the employee's name and all, right, so we could have information available, right? So we'll see that how do we create a query rule out of it. Okay. So first of all, what is a query rule? A query rule is nothing but we are going to create an expression rule. In expression rule, we will be defining that a function, query entity function, which will be used to fetch the data from the database to the Appian label. Okay. So how do we do that? So whenever we talk about something, right? So we start by creating a rule. And whenever we create a rule, we try to put some good name to it, right? A proper name so that we can understand by looking the rule itself that what the purpose of this rule. So I'm going to create an expression rule. I'm going to get the name as get customer information or get customer data, whatever you want, right? So this rule will fetch the data from WT underscore customer table. Okay. So always try to put some good description so that you can by looking at you can understand what the purpose of this rule is. I will say create. Now, when we create a query, expression rule, it says that, okay, what is the function that we need to use to bring the data? Okay, so the function is that a bank query entity. So a bank query entity is a function which is required to fetch the data from the database. If you wanted to know about the function, you just click inside the parenthesis and below that you will be able to see the description. If this description is not sufficient, you can click on this documentation link. It will open a page for you where you can go and go through the entire meaning of it. Anyways, we are going to talk about it, so that's fine. So a query entity function requires three parameters basically, right? Entity, query, and fetch total count. You can see it defined here: entity, query, and fetch total count. Whereas the entity, what is the type of entity? It's a data stored entity. Query is a query type, and fetch total count is a kind of a boolean. So these three parameters we need to pass to make this rule, they make this function understand that which table it has to query and what data it has to bring. So as you see, the first one is called entity, right? So if you remember, we have created the entity, right? If you remember, inside the data store, we have created one entity. So what is the name of the entity for this customer table? The entity name is WT underscore customer underscore entity. Yeah, that is what we have given, WT underscore customer underscore entity. So if I try to put this thing, if I try to copy this name and try to put it here inside the rule that we have created, will it understand that which entity it has to hit? Yes, no? Please be interactive. If you see the description window here, what is the type of entity? Okay, let's wait for the answer then. Then we move on. So I was asking if you see the entity, what is the type of entity? Entity parameter. Anyone? Okay, guys. So there are two ways of a training. I'll ask you guys to ask the questions to be interactive. So you can ask the questions and you can uh, get more out of of the training. The other way is that I will come, I'll talk, I'll go. You know, which one you would like to prefer? If you are not gonna interactive, make it interactive session, then am I audible? Am At least yes, no, I don't understand what is going on.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Why don't you guys then answering me, right? If you don't know, just tell me that no, I don't know this. I'm not able to understand that. But being silent is not an answer, right? If you guys want to be like that, I can come and go and speak up, right? It's not harm to me anything. All right. Okay. So as we can see, this entity is a type of a data stored entity, and whatever we have given a name here is a kind of a text. So this function will not understand that which entity it has to hit. Then what we can do? We talk about this one. How do we make sure that this entity, receive the WT customer entity as an entity, not as text? How we can make sure that? If you guys remember, we talk about a constants. So if we create a constant and I give the name as WT underscore data stored entity DSE underscore uh, customer. So this constant uh, holds the data store entity for WT customer entity. Okay, so what's the type? Type is going to be data store entity. Once you select the data store entity, it will say which data store your entity is residing. So I'm going to select our data store, WT data store. And inside this, we have two entities. One we created for example purpose, and one we this LMS employee, and then another one we created for our purpose, WT customer entity. So I will select second one, and I'll copy the name. I'll create. Once we create this constant, now this constant is a type of a data store entity. So this function will be, and what is the best practice we talk about a constant there? A constant name always be in capital with the underscore separated. Now, how do we refer this constant? So to refer this constant, we have a prefix called CONS, constant, and then name of the constant. Once we do like this, then this function will able to understand that, okay, now which entity it has to hit. Okay, this is a one parameter. Now second parameter is a query. So for the query, we will require a function called abank query. Okay. Now abank query is a very important function because it has everything. If you want to filter your data, if you want to put some selections, if you want to put some restrictions, you can do that under the abank query. The one important parameter that it requires is called paging info. The paging info is required a function called abank paging info. This function abank paging info states that how many number of data you want and from which index you want. It also allows you to sort the data in particular order. So the paging info has three parameters. First is called start index. So I'll say start index is 1. It means I need a data from the first index, very first position I need a data. And then we have batch size. So how many data you want in one batch? If I do 5 or 2, it will bring only 2 data. If I do 5, then it will bring 5 data. If I put 0, it won't give me any data. So what is the way of getting all the data? We need to put as a -1. If you put as a -1, then it will bring the data into the entire data whatever we have available. We also have one more parameter here, the sort. Sort is basically, if I say sort, I want the data to be in the sorted order. So for that, we need to use a function called abank sort info. And into the sort info, we need to provide the field name based on which field we want to sort the data. So let's say I want to sort the data on the first name and then which order. ascending true or false. So we need to pass as an ascending, I'll say true. So please bring the data into the ascending order as a true. Okay. Now these are the two important parameters that we will require. The third parameter that we have inside the query entity is called face total count. So face total count is like if you want the total count of your data in the parameter, you need to mark this as a true. If you mark as a true, then your data will get returned as a like 2 or 3 or 4, whatever the number data you have it. This is enough to execute this query rule. If I click on the test rule, you see this, it is able to return me a data, that two data we have inserted yesterday into the table. These two data is being now returned to me. Now you see that total count is 2. This is becoming 2 because here we have given as a true. If you make it as false, then it won't come. Sort input says that okay, first based on the first name, we are sorting the data. So you see that M and S, the first data is the M, right? We are getting it. So this is how we bring the data by using this query entity function from the database table. Any question till here, guys? So we are talking here three functions: query entity, query, and paging info, and one more sort info. So there are four functions we have used altogether in this role. Is that clear? How do we bring this data from the database? Any questions?
So, sir, for any customer related data, we need to fetch like this, or based on table, it's maybe differ.
No. I mean, we need, if you want to make sure that what's the filter, right? Like say I want to get the data based on for only for monies or only for
Yes.
Sumit or based on the email or based on the mobile number, right?
Yes.
So for that we need to use the filter. So that's the next step. But before going there, do you guys have any question here? Is that clear? How do we? This is a basic minimum thing to be required to execute this query function so that it can return the data, right? So
Yeah.
the question would be in the interview would be like, what is the function we use to fetch the data from the database? The answer would be the query entity function is required to fetch the data from the database. It has three important parameters. First is the entity, second is the query, and third is the fetch total count, where that entity means that which entity it has to hit so that it can bring the data from the database, and that should be a type of data store entity. We cannot simply write the name and uh, mention that this is an entity. So we need to create a constant which will refer to that entity, which we can use that constant here to understand that this is the entity it has to hit. Okay. Second is a query. Query is a very important function because it will let you know that how many data you want, based on any filter you want or not, what are things you wanted to perform, any extra things on your data. So you can make use of query, where the paging info is required to make you understand that, make this query understand that how many data you want. Okay, so 1 second. All right, and the other is the sort info. The sort info it depends that we in which order you want to bring your data back. The other question they may ask you that what is the output of your query entity. So the output of the query entity is a data subset. You see that it's a data subset which has all the information of your paging info like start index, best size, sorting details. It also has the total count, it has the data, and then it also has the identifier. So by default, whatever is the primary key of your data, that will become an identifier here. So Appian will automatically understand that what value it has to put into the identifier. Okay. Now let's see, if I go to make this as a 1, 1, what will happen? Any guesses? Any guesses what could happen here if I make the change from -1 to 1?
think only one batch will be available.
So only one record. You see the total count is 2. Still total count
Yeah.
is 2. But if you see the data is having one item. It has removed the other item, right? So
Yes.
this batch size depend mention that what number of data you wanted to bring. All right. Okay. So if there is no question into this one, then we can move next. Like how do we filter the data? It's not right, we will require all the data all the time. Let's say if user is going to search based on the first name, or if user is going to search based on the last name, so we want to filter the data based on that. So how do we bring that? Okay, so we need to make use of query filter function so that we can filter the data. Now let's say and this query filter function comes under the query function. So here we have the paging info, which is mandatory. We given that, and then we are going to use as a filter. So we have a filter. So for the filter, we have A-bank query filter. A-bank query filter function is required to say that, okay, now you wanted to filter the data based on certain parameters. So what is that parameter? So I'll say the query filter on the field, let's say first name. This parameter name should be same that you are getting it here. And this is coming from a CDT. So remember that we have created a CDT. The CDT is linked with the data store so that it is returning the data in that particular format. And then I may use operators. Now let's say I'm going to use an operator called equal to. We have lots of operators, we'll see that. And then we have a value. Now let's say if I pass Manish. Okay. If I pass the value as a Manish, then what happens is that if I execute this rule, I'm getting only one result based on the Manish. If I change this to Sumit, I'm getting a result where the first name is Sumit. Now if I go and make changes here as Ram, so what will happen? What will happen, guys?
What is the value, sir? Ram?
Yeah.
It will give an error, no, sir, because of RAM and
No,
we
why it
don't
will
have it.
give an error is something like if you code is not working. Our code is perfectly fine. So it says total count is 0, data is 0. We don't have any data where the first name is equal to Ram. Okay. So
Okay.
that's why we didn't get any data.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Now we have many other operators. Now let's say I'm going to use an operator called includes. So what does include means is that now we have MANISH SUMIT. So I is common in both of them, right? Now let's say I pass as an I here. So what it will do is that it will return me that all the data. Why? Because I is available is common between all both of the name. So includes operator works as the is like operator we have in the database. Okay. So if you wanted to use an operator in such a way that we can make use of these different operators here. So there are many other operators. You can go see here if we have equal operators, not equal to, greater than equal to, less than equal to. So all these operators are available based on the data you wanted to make that use, you can use it. Okay. So we are going to use as an I as an operator here. But what will happen is that, whenever we will query this rule, it will only work for I. We want to make it in a generic way so that anything you pass to it, it should work based on that. Now, what we need to do is that we need to create a rule input. So on your right hand side on the window, you see that you can create a rule input. Rule input is a kind of a variable which allows you to pass the value to the particular function. So let's say I'm going to create here rule input as a first name. It's a type of a text. Once you do that, you see one rule input is get created here. Now I say Sumit. If I pass Sumit, I'll get, okay, here. Now we are using this I, right? So here we need to refer this rule input, whatever user is passing. So we need to remove this hard coded value and we need to indicate this rule input. To indicate the rule input, we have a prefix called RI. So RI first name. So now what will happen if I pass Sumit? I'll get the data for the Sumit. If I pass Manish, I'll get the data for the Manish. If I pass Ram here, I won't get any data. Okay. So now this will become dynamic because it will work whatever value you will pass to it. If it has any data available to the system, you will get in as an output. Yeah, otherwise you will get zero, no data. Okay. Any question?
So instead of this rule creation, in operator we can give or and we can set a value, no, sir, this or that.
Yes, you can do that. But how many name value? Let's say imagine you have 5,000 customers, so you'll put all 5,000 customers your name here, and
No.
later 100 customer more get added, so you will come and update your rule,
Okay, okay, got it.
right?
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Now you see this one, right? This filter is only single. What if I want to use more than one filters? Like I also want to fetch on the first name. I also want to fetch on the based on the last name. Is a combination of that and how it works. Okay. So for that, we have another function inside this ABANK query rule. It's called logical expression. Now, logical expressions, what it does is that it allows you to apply more than one filter at the same time. So we will use ABANK logical expression function. It's ABANK query logical expression function. Now you can see here it says what operator you want to use between the filters. Now let's say I'm gonna use operator as AND. Okay. Now it says filters, list of the filters we need to use. So we can, as I said, list of the filters we will use as a curly braces. Now this one I can copy and paste it here. I can get rid of this. I can either comment it or delete it. Let's say I'm gonna comment this one. Now this will still work with the for the first name. Okay, if I put Manish here, it will give me the result. Okay, now what is the difference between this filter and the logical expression is that in the filter we can only pass one query filter, but if you wanted to use more than one query filter, for that we need to use logical expression. Now let's say I would like to filter the data based on the last name as well. This is also going to be type of text. Now we can copy this code and paste it here. Sorry, comma separated. Now here I would change it to the last name, RI last name. Now if I pass monies, and operator is and here. Okay, if I'm gonna pass monies and then if I pass it here, let's say Kumar. So I'll get the same result. Now, if I pass the combination of monies, let me see what's the data into the database. First of all, the last name of Sumit. Okay, Sumit is a Raj. Okay, now if I pass the data like this, Manish and then last name is Raj, how many output we will get it here? Remember this operator and is very important in this case. You might have learned into the college or somewhere like what is the and it's an and or, right? Likewise, what the and operator does. So if I pass this inputs Manish and then first name and then Raj as the last name, what will be the output I'm expecting here?
Single output with Manish Raj.
We don't have Manish Raj, right? You see the database. Manish is there, Sumit is there, and Raj is there here. We don't have any name as a Manish Raj. So what we are expecting here? So Manish is in the first name, Raj in the last name, but different rows.
Count as 0.
So if we click on the test role, we don't have any name where the first name is equal to Manish and the last name is equal to Raj. So that's why we haven't received any output. Now, if I go and change this AND to OR, then what will happen?
Count will be 2.
You'll get
Yeah, count will be 2 and the data will also be 2, right? Right now data is 0. If I pass a test rule, we see we are getting both the result, Manish and then Sumit, the first result and the second result. Why? Because if the operator is being used as an OR, so we are saying that okay, the first name is Manish, which is match in the database, we found it, and then second name is Raj, which is also a match, so we found it. So because here we are using OR operator, so that's the reason we are getting both the result. Okay, got it? How it works? How we get? If you want to add more query filter, we can just simply copy, and then copy paste the code where comma separate and then use the filter. All right. Any question here? How do we use the multiple query filter?
So in entity, can we add one more customer table or?
No, no, no. See, one entity will represent one table.
Okay.
Right? One entity cannot be more than one configuration, right? One entity represent one table.
Okay.
If you want to create an entity of combination of 2 or 3 tables, then you have to create a view. Once you create the view, then your entity will represent that view. In that case, it's a combination of 2 tables, then it will work, right? It will be working there.
Okay.
Yeah. Any question here, guys? You might be thinking of like, oh my God, there's lots of code we need to understand. We need lots of code. We need to do that, right? Okay, let me copy this constant name. I'll go and delete everything. Okay, everything I've deleted. Now, how do we create this kind of code very, quickly in Appian? You see the icon here, launch the query editor, click on it. The second last icon, click on the data store entity, pass the constant that we have created, WT customer. Here we do not have to use a constant prefix, and then you click on continue. Now here you say all rows. All rows means 1 comma -1 into the paging info. Sorting info. I want to sort the order based on the first name in ascending order. Fine. Now it says filters. Add a filter. Select the field on the first name is it includes operator, and then I use say input variables. We have already created variables input, so we say ri first name. Same way add filter on the field last name. It includes operator input last name. Okay. Now just say generate the query. You see, same code is designed here, right? So I just wanted to make sure that you guys understand the code, how it works. That's why I went one by one. Otherwise, you see, it takes 2 seconds to configure this, right? Now, same thing will work here. If I click on this one, it will throw the data. Okay, why it is saying the first name was again? Okay, logical expression operator. Oh, okay, and sorry, here's the and operator. So that's why no result. If I change that to or, we will get the result here. Okay, so that's how the query entity works. We have many more things in the query entity. We'll talk about that. But before moving forward, let me know if you guys have any questions. All right. So who can answer me that? If I want to add one more filter here and based on let's say gender, so how do I do that? This is here's the code, and then I'm asking that I would like to enhance this rule to the gender. So how do I do that? Guide me, anyone?
In operator, we can add a include this one, and in filter level, we can add a gender.
Step by step, tell me first of all what I need to create.
We need to change it an operator as includes.
Where? Line number?
Line number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
No, here this operator is for what kind of operator you want to apply between the filters.
Okay.
Here includes is not available. This is for as we are using multiple filters. So what kind of bonding you want between them filters? So that is for the here, and it means that all should be matched. So I'm saying that I would like to add one more query filter based on the gender. So what I need to do? Okay. First of all, we need to create one more rule input as a gender kind of text. Now we can simply copy this code, comma separated, one more query filter. Here we can use this gender. We will say equal operator here because gender we can't say that includes, and then here we say gender. Now if I go and say as a female, and here I'll say Kumar. So there is a data for Manish Kumar, but I'm also saying that gender should be female. If I click on test rule, I'm not getting any result. Why? Because there is no result, no data where the first name is Manish, second name is Kumar, and third name is female. Sorry, gender is female. Right? If I change this to the male, then I'll get the result. Okay, got it? Any question here? How we can add the filters?
So for every filter, we need to add a rule input first.
Yes. If you want to make it as a generic in the sense,
Okay.
if you want to pass the value from the outside, okay, I need the data for based on this criteria. If you put everything here, then it will be hard coded, right? So this rule will only work for the data that you are giving it here inside the hard coded value, isn't it? So it won't work for the any generic values. That's why we need to make this as rule input so that it can be called upon. So you need to pass the value and you can work it out. Okay. Is it clear,
Can we
guys?
modify can we modify or insert data, or only we can view the data from
We can definitely. How it's possible to create an application without modifying and inserting the data? This is just to bring the data. For that one, we have different purpose, different smart services, different functions. Here we are trying to pull the data from the database. So modifying and deletion and inserting is a different thing. We can do that definitely. We'll see how do we create a record. But here we are talking about like how do we query the data from the database based on our filter criteria. Okay. So if I ask you what is the function which is used to fetch the data from database, what would be your answer? The code is in front of you guys. Still, you guys are thinking to answer this.
So query entity, based on query entity, we used to fetch the customer data.
Yeah. So the question would be like, what is the function which is used to fetch the data from the database? You can say a query entity function is used to fetch the data from database. It has 3 parameters: entity, query, and fetch total count. Whereas the entity is defined that which entity it has to hit to bring the data, which should be a type of data stored entity. Hence, we need to use up a constant. Query is a query function. We can define the filters, we can define the logical operations, we can define the size of the data, we can also define the sorting orders of the data with the help of paging info functions. And fetch total count is defines that do you want to retrieve the total count of data or not. If it's yes, then it will try to pull the data whatever is there into the database, the count of it. Now, to apply the filter, we need to use query filter function. A query filter function is required 3 parameters: field, what kind of operator, and the value. Right? So we can create rule inputs to make it as generic, so that whatever values we will pass to it based on the query filter function, we can filter the data out of it. Okay. If you talk about this much also, this is fine. They may ask you what is the output of your query entity function. So the output of the query entity function is a data subset. It has all the information of the paging info like start index, batch size, sorting info, total count, and also the data. The data is basically is a list of dictionaries, like which is returning the type of list of the data that we have into the system. Now, if I want to have only data, we can simply put dot data at the last. So what will happen is that if you click on the paste tool, all other information will be gone. Only the pure data we will have with us. Okay, so if we want to only the data, we can use dot data. Okay, so this is the query function, query entity we will be using to fetch the data based on our query search. Now let's say we are going to create an UI, and then in the UI I will provide 3 search fields: first name, last name, and gender. So if I pass the first name, I should be getting the data out of it. Okay, and what we will do, we will also display that data into the tabular form so that we can understand what is the data we have it. All right, any question?
No, sir.
Cool. Then practice this one. I have shared these credentials on the WhatsApp group. Create your application. Do not share these credentials with anyone else, please. And whatever the application you will create here, right? Once you go to your designer and create the application, new application, just put your first name into the application so we can know who is working on which application. Okay. In the WhatsApp group, I have shared. All right, guys. Let's quit for today here because I know it will be too much if I put more. But do practice. I'll share the on the WhatsApp group the documentation as well if you wanted to go through that. Otherwise, we have to find a documentation in community. All right. Any other questions? Shall we stop the recording? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Then let's connect tomorrow, Thursday. Thank you.